My mother was my everything, my rock, my confidant, my best friend. The day she passed away, a part of me went with her. I remember standing at her funeral, the world a blur of black suits and sorrowful faces. My heart felt like a hollowed-out cavern, echoing with a pain so profound I could barely breathe. I was lost, adrift in a sea of grief, clinging to the only other anchor I thought I had left. My husband, Mark? As I stood there, trying to process the finality of it all, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Mark. I turned, expecting a comforting arm around me, a whispered word of solace. Instead, he avoided my eyes. His face was a mask of cold indifference, a stark contrast to the overwhelming emotion that was crushing me. He pushed a thick manila envelope into my hands. I stared at it, confused. What was this? Some condolence card he'd forgotten to give me earlier? I opened the flap, my fingers numb and clumsy. The first word I saw, in stark, bold letters, was divorce. The ground beneath my feet seemed to dissolve. Divorce papers. At my mother's funeral, he was divorcing me. Now here, as I stood beside my mother's casket, the shock was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs more effectively than any punch. I looked up at him, my eyes pleading for an explanation, for this to be some cruel, twisted joke. But his expression was unyielding. I just can't do this anymore, he muttered, his voice devoid of any warmth. It's better this way. And then he turned and walked away, leaving me there with the legal documents that were severing my marriage, my hands still clutching them as the first handful of dirt was tossed onto my mother's grave. In that single, horrifying moment, I lost not just my mother, but my entire life as I knew it. The days that followed were a suffocating fog of grief and betrayal. I was staying in my mom's house, a place that should have been a sanctuary of memories, but now felt like a mausoleum of all I had lost. Every corner held a ghost, my mom's favorite armchair, her half-finished knitting project, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. And superimposed over it all was the ghost of my marriage, a life I'd spent 10 years building, now reduced to a pile of legal papers on the coffee table. Mark had moved out while I was making funeral arrangements. He'd been clinical and efficient, packing his things and leaving without a word. The cruelty was breathtaking. He didn't just leave me. He chose the most vulnerable moment of my life to shatter me completely. I called him, I texted him, desperate for answers. Why? Why now? Was there someone else? His replies were short, evasive. He said he'd been unhappy for a long time, that my grief over my mom's illness had been too much for him. Too much. My mother was dying, and my pain was an inconvenience to him. The realization was a slow, dawning horror. The man I had loved, the man I had promised to stand by in sickness and in health, saw my deepest sorrow as a burden. He hadn't just fallen out of love with me. He had a fundamental lack of empathy, a chilling coldness I had somehow never seen. Or maybe I'd chosen not to see it. I remembered all the times I'd made excuses for him. The times he was emotionally distant, the way he'd belittled my ambitions, the subtle ways he isolated me from my friends. I had explained it all away, convinced it was just his way, that he still loved me underneath it all. I was wrong. One rainy afternoon, I was sorting through my mom's belongings, each item a fresh stab to the heart. In the back of her closet, tucked away in a shoebox, I found a collection of old letters. They were from my father, who had passed away years ago. I sat on the floor and read them, tears streaming down my face. There were love letters, filled with adoration and respect for my mom. He wrote about her strength, her kindness, her laugh. He called her his partner, his equal, his entire world. Reading those letters, I saw what true love was. It wasn't about convenience or fair weather affection. It was about unwavering support, about holding someone up when they couldn't stand on their own. It was everything Mark had failed to be, everything he had thrown back in my face. In that moment, surrounded by the evidence of a love that had lasted a lifetime, something inside me shifted. The crushing weight of grief and betrayal began to transform into a cold, hard resolve. Mark thought he had broken me. He had taken my lowest point and tried to bury me right alongside my mother. But he had underestimated me. And he had underestimated the strength I inherited from the very woman he had so disrespected. I picked up my phone and called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the best, most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. When I explained my situation, her voice was calm but firm. She told me what Mark did was known as emotional cruelty and it would not be looked upon kindly. My anger began to burn away the fog of my grief. He wanted a divorce. Fine, I would give him one. But it wouldn't be on his terms. Not anymore. The legal battle was grueling. Mark tried to paint me as unstable, using my grief as a weapon against me. He argued that he deserved the majority of our assets because he was the primary breadwinner, conveniently forgetting the inheritance my parents had given us that had paid for the down payment on our house. He wanted the house, the savings, everything. He wanted to leave me with nothing. But I was no longer the weeping, broken woman from the funeral. I was my mother's daughter. I fought back with a ferocity that surprised everyone, including myself. I documented everything, every dismissive text, every financial contribution I'd made, every time he'd belittled my part-time job that I took so I could care for my mom. My lawyer was brilliant. In the deposition, she calmly questioned Mark about the timing of him serving me the divorce papers. "Mr. Harris," she asked, "can you explain to us why you felt it was appropriate to serve your wife of 10 years with divorce papers while she was standing at her mother's graveside?" The color drained from his face. He stammered, talking about needing a clean break, but the damage was done. His callousness was laid bare for all to see. The tide turned. The judge saw his actions for what they were, a calculated act of cruelty. I didn't just get a fair settlement, I got the house. The house my parents' money had helped buy, the house where I would rebuild my life. The day the divorce was finalized, I didn't feel elation, just a quiet, profound sense of release. It was over. I had survived. After the legal proceedings were done, I sold the house. It held too many memories, good and bad. I used the money to buy a small cottage in the countryside, the kind of place my mom had always dreamed of retiring to. I planted a garden full of her favorite flowers, roses, and lavender. In the quiet solitude, I finally had the space to truly mourn her, without the shadow of Mark's betrayal looming over me. I grieved, I cried, I let myself feel all the pain I had been forced to suppress. And then, slowly, I started to heal. I reconnected with the friends Mark had pushed away. I started painting again, a passion I had let slide during my marriage. My life began to fill with color and laughter. I learned that I was stronger than I ever thought possible. Losing my mother was the most painful experience of my life, and Mark's betrayal nearly destroyed me. But in the ashes of that old life, I found a new one. A life that was truly my own, built on a foundation of self-respect and the enduring strength my mother had instilled in me. He thought he was burying me, but he didn't realize he had planted a seed. And from the darkest earth, I bloomed. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever faced a profound loss or betrayal, know that you have the strength to get through it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and hope.